Hey, this is John from Alloy to 11. In this video, I will be disassembling and reassembling the Chiappa 1873-22 single action revolver. This is a really simple revolver to disassemble and reassemble, but as I'll get into in a bit, you may not want to do that too many times with this particular revolver. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to ensure that it is not loaded. It is not. Now we'll remove the cylinder access pin. Just push this button, pull it out. Now remove the cylinder. Make sure you don't lose this insert. Set that off to the side. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the grips. You just need a Phillips head screwdriver for that. I believe it's the number 1 Phillips head. Get up here so we can get some good unscrewing action. And just your basic, lefty loosey, righty tighty sort of ordeal. There we go. Now all of these screws are a bit loose, as I did just take this apart not long ago. Next, we will be removing the trigger guard and grip frame. That's 5 screws actually. What am I saying? 4 screws. You have one here, one there, one there, and one there. And when you take this off, there is a small pin you have to watch out for. I believe it's right there, to make sure that you don't lose. We'll see it in a second. I may be wrong. Anyway, go ahead and take that same Phillips head and kind of hold the grip as you remove it. Not so important with the first screws. These back 4 are the same length. Oop. If you pull one out, make sure that you set that off to the side. You don't want to lose those. And you have your front screw. Set that off. Now, as you can see, that one is significantly shorter than the other. Set those down. If you notice, they also kind of look like wood screws. Anyway, getting to the back here. I mean, to say I'm disappointed with these screws, I just say I would be. I'm disappointed with those screws. But now, like I said, when you remove the last one, keep some tension on it. I mean, that is the hammer spring, so there's tension there. And then make sure you remove it. There you go. Just like that. And the reason why I say you want to make sure you do that is because you have a small spring right there that you don't want to lose. See if I can pull that out without flinging it across the table. Because I don't really want to just pour it out. Let's see if I can. There we go. Oh, and there's the other spring out of the bottom. I was going to get to that one. You go back in there. But down inside this hole, there's also that pin. So don't lose either that nor the spring. Now getting to the spring that wanted to come out early. This is the spring that goes right here. It's what holds your loading gate in place. And you have another plunger there, big fat one. So set those off to the side. And that's that frame. Go ahead and set that off to the side. Now you're just left with the, well, you can remove the loading gate just by sliding it out now. As you can see, that's where, maybe, there you go. You can see that's where that plug pin interacts with. So set that off to the side. Now you just have these 3 screws that hold your trigger and hammer in place and your cylinder stop. Now I'm going to just use 1 screwdriver for this, but make sure you use the right size for this screw. I'm using just this 1 screwdriver because it's what I have handy, and like I said, all these screws are loose already, and this works for these 2 and the other. So there is your cylinder stop. Nope, still not quite there. And there is your trigger. And now your hammer. And set those off, off to the side. Now you can just remove your hammer. The paw comes out of the hammer like that if you want to clean it or whatever. We'll set that off to the side. We'll remove the trigger. Now you have one more screw that holds this flat spring into place. This is another Phillips head, and it is also another very short Phillips head. So remove that. There we go. I won't say it. Set your spring down. And then there's your cylinder stop. One more thing to remove, which is your ejector rod and spring. You just have one screw up here. Now you could actually remove this at any point, but I just chose to do it last because, well, it's the simplest. Just be careful not to let it shoot off. There you have your spring, ejector rod, and then you can take it out. I'm not going to take it out, it doesn't really need to be taken out. So, all pretty simple. There we go. Set that there. Okay, now we're back after a short 2.5 month break or so in between the time I disassembled this and now I'm finally sitting down to reassemble this. There are a few things that I've disassembled that I hadn't disassembled on video before, like the ejector rod, which we have here. If you'll notice, it's thicker on one end, thinner on the other. The thicker end is the threaded end. That is the end that goes towards the front. In fact, let's go ahead and start with reassembling the ejector rod and shroud. Here's the ejector shroud. Here's the handle for the ejector rod. If you notice, it's beveled towards the front. Go ahead and slide that in the shroud, like so. And then the rod just threads right into it. Get it back there. There we go. And if I can do it, it's a little finicky to try to do on camera here. It's not bad. There we go. Now, earlier, and if I were doing this, there we go. I might go ahead and take a cloth and maybe a pair of pliers and really give it just a little bit more torque on there, but it should stay in place. There's not a lot to work that loose. Anyway, next we have, not that, this, which is a little bushing. Goes on the ejector rod, like so. And then we have the spring. Goes on like this, the bell end. Oh, that's great. The bell end goes towards the cylinder. So now that we've gotten that put back together, we'll go ahead and slide it. Zoom in a tad here. Slide it onto our frame, or our barrel, like so. Then flip it over. And this screw here, the one that's got the fat end on it, threaded thin part, threaded section, goes in the end, and that's what secures it to the barrel. That's just a little flat-headed screw, like so. Now that's in place. Now let's go ahead and do our cylinder retaining pin, latch, however you want to put it. Now I gotta find little pieces for it. Here we go. And see if I can get this right the first time. Let's see. The fat end goes into the right hand side of the receiver, or frame. I guess I should say frame. Then your spring and your screw goes on the left hand side. Now I'm just gonna hold that in place. And well, like that. As you can see, that's how that goes. And it is 2 flat-headed screws, so you'll need 2 flat-headed screwdrivers to tighten it up. As I scan the workbench here for them, which I don't see. Well, I'm just going to get it relatively tight. There we go. And let's see if we can, I don't know if I can get a light down in there very well. I can't. There we go. You can kind of see it. Now, best I could, but you can't really quite see it down in there. But the fatter section, the fatter side here, is what keeps this pin in place. If you were to slide this in, push that over, boom, that is what keeps that there. Now go ahead and pull the access pin back out because we're not ready for that. Let's flip it over. Now we will do the bottom portions, which you'll start out with the hammer, or you want to put the paw on the side of the hammer first, and then that slides into here, like, oh, not like that. You want to make sure you keep your paw facing forward. There you go, and that just slides in like that. Then you can take your screw, like so, get that in place so it's held where it should be, and just finger tightening that in. Now I'm going to go ahead and put our cylinder stop in place. That just slides in here and gets held in with one of these screws. You can go ahead and put that in now. Keep everything nice in place and where it should be. There we go. And I'm just doing these finger tight for now. They just need to be there to keep it in place. So no, that doesn't seem to be wanting to. There we go. Now we're going to take the trigger, and it goes directly beside there. I don't know why I just made that sound. Anyway, it goes directly beside it in the hole right behind there. I can get it lined up. There we go, like so. That's how that goes. There you go. And you just, again, just getting it finger tight. It doesn't have to be tight in there yet, though I don't really like the way that's kind of stuck. I think it's okay. Okay, now your spring for your cylinder stop and your trigger, oops, there we go, goes in right here like that with the arched portion facing down, like so. As you can see the arched portion. Now you'll have two small Phillips head screws. One of them is the one that goes in there, and the other is the one that holds the frame in the front. The difference between the two, as you can see, this one has a flat side that it looks like they just kind of ground down a little bit, and then this one has a pointed end. You want to take the flat machine screw, and that is the one you use to hold the spring in. There. Oh, nope, not quite. There we go. Now, no, that's kind of in the way. My hand is kind of in the way. There we go. Now I'll grab my Phillips head screwdriver. Actually, I think I can use this little one to start it. Now you do want to make sure your spring is lined up correctly. It'll pretty much sit where it needs to sit, although I do want it to be a little more centered on the trigger. There we go. There we go. It's not that big of a deal, but you do want to be careful when you tighten it down. Don't over tighten it, because this is alloy frame and you don't want to strip that out, because that is important. It's one of the reasons why I don't really think you should take this gun apart any more than you have to. Okay, now we've got trigger, hammer, cylinder stop in. Most important features. Well, other than the frame. I guess the frame is pretty important. Without that, it'd be kind of hard to hold. Now, you gotta take your ejector, or your loading gate, slip it in, and then this slips right in there. And then you have your spring that holds it in place. Huh, you know, I thought that I'd lost this spring. I guess I hadn't lost this spring. That is for the pin that holds the ratchet against the back of the cylinder. And it goes right in this hole here, that one right there. And then this spring goes right in above it. Now, this can be a little tricky to get this grip frame into place and keep these springs in place as well. So you want to get your trigger in, then kind of rotate it up and like this, because you have to make sure that you have your mainspring below your below your hammer, right on that bearing, and everything else lined up. And then you have to hold it in place while you take these other Phillips head screws and put them in place, like so. Do these two bottom ones. Okay, I'm going to do the two back. Okay. And now we will do the one in front. And remember, this is the pointy one. And there we go. That's pretty much all of it in place, at least, except for the cylinder, which is pretty simple. Drop that in. Cylinder access pin. Yeah. There we go. That's in place. Now it should be functional. Well, it is functional. There we go. Okay. Anyway. Oh, it would probably help if I tighten the rest of these screws up. I'm sure that that is a bit of an effect on its functionality. There we go. And there we go. There we go. There we go. Maybe. Oh, that would probably be why. Just not getting anything done right there. There we go. Now, see, sometimes it's just the little things. What was keeping that from actioning was I hadn't quite pushed the cylinder access pin all the way in. So because it was sticking out about like that, I just looked really foolish, like I hadn't put this back together right. But I had. Just the access pin sticking out that little bit kept it from actioning correctly. Ooh. And then you have your grip frame, like so, like so. And again, Phillips head screw. And don't over tighten. And there we go. Back together. Kind of wish it hadn't taken me quite so long to get this video done. One, because I haven't had much of a video up in a while, and two, because it took me a little bit to get this thing back together right, because I hadn't, I took it apart 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago or so. But now it's working and my son will be very happy. And although I didn't really get to address it much, when I first went to put this back together, I thought that I'd lost the spring that holds the paw right here up against the cylinder. And I couldn't find it. Apparently it was just in the pile of parts there. But if you find yourself in such a position where you're dropping the center of the cylinder out, but if you find yourself in such a position that you've lost that spring and you don't have time or you don't want to order a new one, you can take and make a small spring out of the spring from the inside of a Bic lighter. Now, I'm not going to say that this is going to necessarily be the proper tension of spring, and if you need a very specific weight of a small spring like this, then maybe this isn't going to work. But for something like keeping tension on the paw on the back of the cylinder, you can use a spring like this. And you may not know, Bic lighters have a giant spring in them. You probably do, but they also have a giant piece of flint in them. Now this is a used up Bic lighter. If you very carefully pop the metal shield off, there you go. You have your wheel and your flint. And now, holding your wheel in, go ahead and pop one side up. And then keep your hand over the whole thing and pull it out. And you will end up with a good sized piece of flint. If you, say, have a Zippo or a windproof lighter of that nature, you can use those in that. And then also, you end up with quite a long, small spring that you can use for things like that, or anywhere else you maybe need a small diameter, large spring. I don't know what weight it is or anything of that nature, but it can work in the pinch when you need a spring. So, after 2.5 months of trying to make this video, and finally getting it done, my son will be very happy that his favorite single action 22 is back in service. It's been sitting here on this table. We've gone shooting a few times, and he's been like, when are you going to get it back together? Well, I finally have. So, if you found this video helpful or informative, I really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you like my other content and enjoy that as well, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. So, thanks, and have a great day. Bye.